Welcome to this explainer on DetrmAssist, from tool hopping chaos to system design. If you're a product manager, a program leader, or really just anyone trying to manage complex delivery across a modern organization right now, you are almost certainly intimately familiar with a very specific, very modern kind of exhaustion. You absolutely know the feeling. It's that end of the day, staring at your ceiling burnout that doesn't actually come from solving hard problems. Instead, it comes from just trying to figure out where the information you need actually lives. Well, today we're unpacking some fascinating material that hits the nail right on the head. We're going to look at the tool-hopping chaos that so many of us are drowning in, and, more importantly, how we can actually transition from that chaos into true system design. Okay, let's just jump right into the deep end here. Update Jira. It's just two simple words, right? But those two words probably dictate a massive, massive portion of your day. It's simple on the surface, but think about the actual reality of a PM screen on, say, any given Tuesday morning. It is an absolute blur of fast cuts. You've got a Jira tab open, an email thread you're supposed to monitoring, a rogue sticky note staring at you demanding you follow up by Friday. The exact shape of our daily busyness has totally mutated. We're spending our days manually routing information from one silo to another instead of actually making decisions. Honestly, most days you aren't really managing a product, you're just acting as a human API. And then, of course, the second you finish there, you jump over to the next tool, follow up in Slack. It's wild, because every single organization swears by its own unique way of working. They have their own completely custom dashboards, their own hyper-specific naming conventions, and their own wildly subjective version of what done actually means. Which means every single time you move between these tools, or even just between different teams' Slack channels, you have to completely reset your brain. You are constantly translating. You're forced to relearn what a basic fundamental signal even means, completely from scratch, every single time you context switch. And it just keeps compounding. Now you have to go check 3 different dashboards just to figure out if a feature actually shipped, or if it just kind of looks shipped because some arbitrary metric moved. A crucial decision gets made in a random thread somewhere, and it literally takes a whole week for that new reality to be reflected anywhere else in the company. A ticket gets assigned to 10 different people, which means no one owns it, and an urgent email goes unanswered for 3 weeks. But here's the ultimate irony of all this. The information you're looking for isn't actually missing, it's just completely disintegrated. It's scattered to the wind across every single tool your org happens to use, and it's styled in a totally different way in each one. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this microscopic daily chaos rolls up into a massive macroscopic problem. Look at this number. 70%. That is the staggering failure rate of transformation programs. Let that sink in. 70% of them just fall completely short of their goals. When we zoom out and look at this tool-hopping exhaustion, we realize it's not just a minor workplace annoyance. It is actively, systematically killing our ability to deliver outcomes at a strategic level. So let's unpack exactly why that is. Our source material puts it perfectly. Most programs don't fail because people aren't working hard. They failed because delivery, process, governance, and decisions are disconnected. That breakdown, it happens right there in the messy gap between strategy and execution. It's driven by unclear ownership, stakeholder misalignment, and this constant reliance on vanity agile metrics rather than real, tangible value signals. The people on the ground are working incredibly hard, often burning themselves out, but their efforts are totally disconnected from the actual outcomes. And how do we usually try to fix this? By adding more meetings, more ceremonies, more layers of management. But true transformation doesn't mean adding more ceremonies to everybody's calendar. True transformation means reducing friction. Which brings us to a really pivotal question. I want you to take a moment and really think about this. What if the tools didn't have to change? What if the problem was actually never the tools themselves? The root issue is that every organization's dashboard is completely personalized, meaning the exact same kind of signal looks totally different everywhere you look. So what if, instead of forcing everyone to adopt a brand new tool and abandon all the workflows they already know and are comfortable with, we just changed how we perceive the data flowing through them? To actually pull that off, we look to the DetrmAssist framework, which is a highly effective, practical model for program transformation. It's a 5-step process. It starts with define. You anchor everything in actual business outcomes, not just busy work or activity. Then, enable your teams by actively removing blockers and designing for execution. From there, you track real value signals, totally ignoring those velocity vanity metrics. Then, remove, continuously eliminate constraints and friction, and finally, measure the real impact to close the feedback loop. This entire framework demands that we strip away the noise. So how do we actually achieve that kind of clarity within the DTRM framework? Enter DTRMAssist.
Just imagine this for a second. Underneath, however your org already works, however it currently dashboards, tags, routes, and reports its data, there is one standard way to perceive what actually matters. DetrmAssist is not some clunky new dashboard that you have to sit through a 3-hour training to learn. It is a consistent, standardized lens that just sits quietly underneath the personal dashboards and tools your team is already using. Let's break down how this practically operates on a day-to-day basis. DetrmAssist simply reads what's actually happening. It looks at the real decisions being made wherever they happen to live in your scattered tools, and it classifies them clearly and plainly on one standard basis, every single time. It doesn't matter which org, which dashboard, or which weird personal style of working sits on top. A signal comes in, and a short, human-readable inference sits right next to it. And that inference doesn't randomly change depending on who happens to be looking at it. But, and this is absolutely vital to understand, it leaves the final judgment entirely up to you. Which introduces this absolutely brilliant concept called gated autonomy. It's defined as a system that acts quietly on what it is confident about and stops to wait for human review exactly where it isn't. You see, trust is not just blindly assumed on day one here. You review the inference, you tap to confirm it, or if it's slightly off, you highlight it and give feedback. And when you make that correction, it gets picked up quietly. You don't have a JIRA ticket suddenly exploding into 10 new assignees. Trust is earned in small, manageable steps, one single correction at a time. The system moves automatically where the ground is solid, and it literally hits the brakes and waits for you exactly where it isn't. It's not the old manual chaos, and it's certainly not reckless runaway automation. Now, think about what this means for you, for your actual career trajectory. Traditionally, we have the chaotic status quo, the traditional PM. In that role, you are basically a coordinator. You're doing endless status coordination, meeting facilitation, tracking tiny tasks, and building manual reports. But by standardizing how we perceive data and leveraging gated autonomy, you elevate yourself into an entirely new tier, the AI-era PM. You essentially become a system designer. Your days are no longer spent mindlessly copying and pasting. They are spent on real signal detection, building resilient decision systems, designing operating rhythms, and crafting governance architecture. But remember, it's all about structure before scale. DetrmAssist is that crucial foundational first step on that journey. Listen, it is not the finished, completely hands-off, magical whole system just yet, and honestly, it doesn't pretend to be. What it does is provide a standard basis for how signals get perceived so that the process running underneath can finally actually start to be trusted. And once it's trusted, then eventually it can be scaled. It's the essential, unglamorous groundwork required for systems that can one day be trusted to run themselves. I want to wrap up by leaving you with this incredibly powerful final thought from our source material today. Transformation is not changing tools, it is changing how decisions become outcomes. So if your organization is currently struggling to deliver, ask yourself, are you just buying shiny new tools to coordinate the chaos, or are you actually building a standard system of perception to turn your decisions into real, measurable outcomes? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll need you to reflect on how decisions are truly being made in your own organization today.